This opened at 27, and that was an awful number by any sportsbook director who put it out there.
I love that their schedule broke, so they get basically all of their coin flip games at home, and they just don't lose there.
So this guy is a physical specimen, and this will only be his 6th year playing organized football.
The Big Bets on Campus podcast.
All right, here we go.
Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by BetMGM. I'm Mike Calabrese, and this is the Group of 5 Deep Dive. Preview season now in the books, week 0 on the horizon, just hours away by the time you're listening to this. And if you're thinking to yourself, man, I wish I got this episode earlier, I have good news for you. The BBOC YouTube channel is now officially live. Go over and subscribe. You'll be able to get episodes of this podcast as well as all the great content that we churn out between Stuckey, Colin, Brett McMurphy, Mike Iannello, and myself, as well as special exclusives with Johnny Football himself, Johnny Manziel, as well as interviews with other college athletes. We're going to have everything that you've come to know and love from the BBOC with all kinds of new additions throughout the season. So please head on over to the BBOC YouTube channel, put in BBOC Sports Betting into the search bar, subscribe, go ahead and comment, interact with it in as many ways as you can. It really helps us here. All right, Mike, I'm going to welcome you back in. I know preview season was long. We put in a lot of hard work, a lot of hours researching, but now the real bullets are flying. We have real God-loving football on Saturday. I know this isn't the most exciting slate in the world, but how do you feel about week 0?
I am so excited. It has been a long offseason for college football fans. We had, conference realignment, playoff expansion, NIL talk, transfer portal talk. Finally, all that bullshit is gone. We have football games, football being played, football to bet on. Could not be more excited. Woke up, I don't know about you. We live in PA. I don't know where everyone else is listening. We're recording this Tuesday morning, and boy, Calabrese, didn't you just feel football in the air this morning? Tuesday morning in PA was like 63 degrees. It was football weather. I am so excited.
Got myself a little pumpkin spice coffee from Wawa, proceeded to fumble it and spill the entire thing in the parking lot, spiked it, got nice and mad. So I got all the pumpkin flavor. I got the cold air. I got the anger churning through me. That's football season, baby. Those are all the emotions put together.
I got my Mac hoodie on. I'm ready to go.
All right, so what do you think here? How should we walk through, before we get to the week 0 slate, obviously we're going to discuss all 3 games. What do you think in terms of a quick recap on what we covered in preview season?
Yeah, you mentioned how much we were grinding away with preseason pods. But look, we get it. People are busy. If you didn't have time to listen to the preseason pods, first of all, what are you doing? Hit pause now. Go back and listen. We'll wait. When you come back to us, if you don't have time or if you just forgot, we're going to quickly run through just our best bets. Let's tell people what our favorite one was, conference future, favorite over, favorite under. I'll start with my favorite conference future of the G5. Give me James Madison, plus 850 to win the Sun Belt. By your smirk, I have a feeling your favorite one is still in the same conference. But look, Bob Chesney comes over from Holy Cross. He's won everywhere he's gone. Obviously, the big story is their entire roster is gone. They're all at Indiana now. But they bring in some nice pieces as well. Dylan Morris at quarterback from Washington, George Pettaway from running back from North Carolina. And FCS All-American Jacob Dobbs comes from Holy Cross with Chesney to take over this defense. And the schedule sets up super nice for them. They play App State, but then they play the 7 worst teams in the conference. So I think there's a chance they're 9-1 heading into that App State game. And that's going to decide who goes to the Sun Belt title game. So at that 850 price, you're kind of getting them 850 to beat App State, and then you can always hedge in the title game, possibly against your team if they will. But I think 850 is a great price on a team that I think should be favored in 10 games. So give me the James Madison Dukes, who have been ineligible the last 2 years and are now finally eligible to win the Sun Belt. I think they do.
I love James Madison. You're never going to hear a negative word on the Dukes out of my mouth, particularly with one of the best hires across all of FBS football, bringing in that Jeremy Renner looking SOB. This guy just wins. D3, D2, FCS, doesn't matter. He comes in and wins. And as you brought it up, he's brought in some interesting mix of talent from some FCS kids who are well-established, played at an all-American level, to really going through, and grabbing some major power guys as well. And what's interesting is we just saw it with the Boise State quarterback quarterback situation. Just because you bring in a power guy at quarterback doesn't mean that he's going to win the job. He's going to win over the locker room. But Dylan Morris at least still has that opportunity, even with Boise moving away from Malachi Nelson. That's an interesting story that we will get into in the coming weeks. I like James Madison to make the title game. I think they're going to play Texas State, but I'm going to go even further. I think Texas State wins that SBC title game and they go to the college football playoff 13-1. I got it at 16-1. Make sure to go ahead and shop around, get the absolute best number. It's pretty simple. GJ Kenny is an offensive savant. Mac Leftwich is offensive coordinator. Everything that they promised, it was all there in year one. Year one, right off the bat, for a program that has not exactly been crushing it, not exactly stacking the wins. They average almost 37 points per game. They're top 30 in both run and pass. I think that's critical because a lot of these teams, you can heat up quickly with a pass-only offense that basically leaves the defense out to dry. But that's not necessarily what Texas State has. They can beat you in any way that you have weaknesses. They're really good on third down, top 30 there as well, and they always finish their drives in the end zone. So really, it's just the question of can their defense take any step forward? Because last year it was boom or bust. They either created negative plays or they gave up long touchdowns. That was it. So my question here is this. They were third in TFLs, and they were 90th in plays from scrimmage that went for 30-plus yards against them. Can they improve? Now, if you go back and listen to the Sun Belt Conference preview with Ianello, Stuckey, and myself, those two guys think there's no chance that the Bobs improve. But we know this about college football. Nothing stays the same. And just like James Madison, who brought in a host of transfers, they go ahead and they do it on the defensive line. A former four-star from Michigan State. They bring in Stephen Parker, an FCS All-American as well. So I still think their pass rush is going to be salty. I think they're going to be living in the offensive backfields. And if they can just crack, let's call it, the top 75 on defense. They're the 74th best team in America on that side of the ball. This team has a legitimate chance to make the college football playoff. And at 13-1, 14-1, whatever you can find in that neighborhood, I think it's worth a shot. It's why it's my favorite future at this point.
Yeah. Hey, look, ideally, we're going to have James Madison versus Texas State in the Sun Belt title game. We'll have to watch that game together, maybe have a little side wager on it, maybe a t-shirt bet for that one. And yeah, at least we'll be able to say we gave out a Sun Belt champion.
And the last thing I'll say on this too, and because I'm going to have to defend this defense because they weren't doing a whole lot of defending last year. They got 8 seniors or super seniors on this defense and 3 juniors. So if seniority, if veteran play, if lots of experience count for nothing, then they'll be just as bad as they were last year. But I have a feeling that they're going to take a baby step forward. And if they do so, particularly the way that their schedule shakes out, they miss James Madison and they also miss App State. Scheduling makes such a huge difference in this conference. So missing them in the crossover was huge.
Well, I missed them to the title game. Let's pivot to win totals. Favorite over. You actually mentioned a storyline that kind of made me like my favorite over just a hair more. Give me Wyoming over 6.5. Look, we talked about how big a key the transfer portal is, especially for the G5. I don't know about you, but half my offseason was just crossing guys' names off my list of teams. Wyoming lost just 3 players to the portal, and only one of them really saw significant playing time. They bring back nearly every starter on both sides of the ball, especially on defense, and with defensive coordinator Jay Swavel being promoted to head coach, I think that says a lot about what this team thinks of him, that they all want to stay. They want to play for him. Now, recently, it was announced running back Harrison Whaley will miss the start of the season, which is definitely a concern. But they have 2 running backs that are back that saw carries last year that should help carry the load. And I think the defense is going to be terrific and do most of the work carrying them. Quarterback Evan Svoboda takes over for Andrew Peasley. Svoboda's 6'5", 245 pounds. He's already getting compared to Josh Allen. He even wears number 17. So I'm bullish on Svoboda. I've liked what I've seen from him out of spring camp and everything. And then Wyoming has one of the best home field advantages in college football. Everyone knows that. The altitude in Laramie, it's always windy. It's a tough place to play. And I love that their schedule broke, so they get basically all of their coin flip games at home, and they just don't lose there. Their road games are at North Texas, at San Jose State, at New Mexico, and at Colorado State. Those are all winnable. Colorado State's probably the hardest of the group. And then they finish the year with Boise State at home, which when we recorded the Mountain West preview was chalked up as a loss. That might be a little more coin flippy because I think not having Malachi Nelson, the 5-star, talent, kind of lowers Boise's ceiling a little bit. I still think Boise's going to be good. Obviously, Ashton Jeanty's still back. But I think that game's a little bit more coin flippy now, especially in Laramie. So I'll be honest, I think they hit 6.5 before the Boise State game anyway, but I do like that now that game does appear a little bit more winnable than it once did. I'm very bullish on this team. Give me Wyoming over 6.5. What about you? What do you think of that? And what is your favorite over going into G5 season?
So Wyoming should have the same identity. I know that Craig Bowl is gone, and it would be nice if you had the continuity of somebody who was, I mean, if you talk about a team taking on the identity of a coach, you'd be hard pressed to find a better one than Bowl and the Cowboys in recent years. But all the pieces are still there. Harrison Whaley being banged up hurts, but he's always been banged up. I feel like he hasn't played a full season in his entire college career. So the fact of the matter is they've learned to play without him. I think they're going to be able to, like, when you talk about a position that is made for a by committee solution, it is the running back position. So I don't think that's enough to talk you off the Pokes, who, you know, their home field advantage cannot be overstated. They're one of the best teams, particularly from an upset perspective. Whenever they are a home dog, you have to take the Cowboys seriously. And that's a big part of going over a win total like this. They need to win maybe a game or two just to feel confident down the stretch. They need to have an upset or two in there. And the Pokes have been able to produce that in recent years. I'm going to stay in the same conference. I'm going to go over 7 for UNLV. I think this is just the public saying UNLV has not been a good program really in 40 years. Like, you got to go back to the mid 80s with Randall Cunningham, the last time they were consistently winning football games. So I understand that last year people are viewing it as a flash in the pan, but they bring in Matthew Sluka from Holy Cross. They got Haj Malik Williams in a fall quarterback camp as well, a fall quarterback battle as well in fall camp. If either of these guys hit, but particularly Sluka, I cannot wait to jump on the Sluka bandwagon. This is going to be one of our guys, with, you know, a capital O, a capital G, because he was a Walter Payton Award finalist at Holy Cross. He had nearly 1,300 rushing yards. He is an absolute dog when he pulls it down and uses his legs to beat teams. And when he had to play up, Holy Cross had multiple games, you know, when he was starting, that they played FBS competition. In those 4 games, he ran for 560 yards. So he's somebody in this Brennan Marion go-go offense that can really hurt people. And if he pops offensively, I think they have top 25 potential by year's end. And the reason I say that is he's throwing to Ricky White, who's not just a G5 All-American. He is an AP All-American. This guy is going to be playing on Sundays. He's got Jane Thomas in the backfield, who is a freshman All-American as well. And they went and did the right thing in the portal. They get Jalen Catalon from Texas. They get Tony Grimes, a former blue chip recruit from Texas A&M. If these guys can pop in their secondary and they can get just a little bit better on that side of the ball, forget about 7. I think they're going to be a real threat to Boise to win this conference, because they get them on a Friday night on October 25th at Allegiant Stadium. I think the running Rebs are being slept on, and the schedule, in my opinion, still sets up for mayhem. They're at Houston, they're at Kansas, and they host Syracuse all within the first 5 weeks. I think there's a good chance they go 2-1 in that stretch. I'm not afraid of Houston. Syracuse, you know, I still think is in a rebuild. Kyle McCord is not this big, sexy transfer get that I think some people make him out to be. And Kansas is without Kotelnicki. So I think there's an opportunity for them to win any of those games. And if they win 2, they're certainly going over 7.
Yeah, I like it. I think it almost kind of plays similar to me with my Wyoming thing. Is I just think that the Malachi Nelson not winning that Boise job to me was, I think when we talked all offseason, we were envisioning this team with a 5-star talent at quarterback and an All-American talent at running back. And to me, now they have like just a guy at quarterback and a All-American. I mean, that's what they had last year. I get they won the conference last year, but I think that this raises the value on Fresno State. I think it just makes Boise seem a little less invincible and just kind of raises everyone in the Mountain West up a little bit. So I like that pick as well. Now let's get a little negative. You know, sometimes you got to root for some teams to lose all year. So who is your favorite under across the group of 5 this season?
I had a decent amount in this category, but one stood above the rest.
UAB?
I'm going to be rooting against UAB, both emotionally and monetarily, for the entire season. Although I think there are some spots where betting on Trent Dilfer's offense is actually the right thing to do, as much as it pains me to say that. Here's a team that you can fade in just about every game: Louisiana Tech, under 4.
Oh, that's mine too.
There we go. All right, we're doubling down here. This is the roster that gets Sonny Cumbie fired. He's 6-18 out of the gate. Not exactly feeling good. Hasn't got the dreaded, you know, vote of confidence yet from his athletic director. That's right around the corner. -9 in the net tarp, thanks to our man here in the BBOC universe, Colin Wilson. We know that's not only the worst in Conference USA, but tied for 9th worst in America in terms of how much they lost in the portal, how much they lost at graduation. This team is devoid of talent. And if they had a savior at quarterback, if they swung for the fences and went with a dual threat quarterback, maybe moving up from the FCS, or, a power guy that dropped down who just couldn't play, Jack Turner comes in instead. And man, he is the definition of meh. 5 TDs, 5 picks last year, sub 57% completions. I don't see this offense moving.
Wait, I'd argue meh is more of like a average. I'd argue he's more of a bleh than a meh.
All right, I think that's a fine piece to get into the weeds on, because listen, the depth of how bad this offense could be, I don't think can be overstated, and that's before we even get to the defense, which last season couldn't stop the run at all. And if you're hoping for that 5th win, if you for some ungodly reason bet over 4.5, you're hoping for the win with this run defense that can't stop anybody. Here's what they finish with: Jacksonville State, that Rich Rod's going to run it down your throat. At Western Kentucky, that's an offense that I think is going to be able to shred them. At Arkansas, and then Kennesaw in the very last game, after getting, basically being a punching bag the entire season. That's all that they want to do, is run the football. So I think there's a chance that they lose 10 games in this season. If you can find a market first coach to be fired, Sonny Cumbie has to be very high on that list. 4.5, I think, is way too generous. I think this is off by a game and a half. So that's why it's my number 1 under on the board.
Hey, Breeze, more like cloudy Cumbie. Am I right?
I'm definitely we can workshop that one. It's fine. We'll get there.
I'm definitely on this deal. There's actually an under 5 out there, which I also like, but I'm with you. Even 4.5, I'll take. Is that 4.5 at plus money?
4.5, I saw like plus 112 in different books out there.
I agree with you. I don't see 5. You mentioned all the turn. I'm with you. Jack Turner was horrible. He couldn't even take Hank Bachmeier's job last year, and we know what I think of Hank Bachmeier. I mean, this team won 3 games last year with Smoke Harris, Cyrus Allen, and Kyle Maxwell all at receiver. They had crazy skill position guys, and we're still terrible.
Harris is just making plays everywhere. The gigantic hole in their production, all-purpose wise, with Smoke Harris gone, can't be overstated as well.
Yeah, so now they lose their 3 best players. Their only 3, basically talented players they have. You mentioned the defense is going to be horrific, 129th in the country at stopping the run. They have just 3 starters back. I don't see how you can look at this team and say they're better than last year, and the team that won 3 games last year is supposed to win 5 or 6. I think this team's going to be a mess. I don't see how they make a bowl. I'm with you, way under on La Tech here. Should we get a little more positive now? Listen, we have made a name
on a positive note.
We have made a name for ourselves and our fan base, who is very loyal, with putting our flag in guys early in the year, saying this is going to be our guy. Bailey Zappi, the Our Guy Memorial Award. And then obviously last year, Diego, our boy. Our fans loved him. Everyone jumped on board except Stuckey, that miserable bastard who kept losing all his money on him. So we're going to do that again this year. Let's pick a few guys. Who do you have your eye on this year that has potential to be the next Zappi, Diego, or just the guy we're rooting for all year?
A team that is getting bandied about a lot in the Action Network Slack channel is Bowling Green. And I think Bowling Green, their win total, they're at close to 7-1 to win the MAC. If you're feeling really crazy, you could take them to make the college football playoff. I'm not going quite that far, but I will say betting on them in MAC play, I think is going to be my distinct pleasure this year, because they have Harold Fannin Jr. at tight end and no one else does. He's a former wide receiver turned tight end. You can see it in his game. He had an 88.2 grade from Pro Football Focus, which was tops among all tight ends in the entire country. He also led the position with 2.82 yards per route run. He's a yak specialist. You get him the ball, and he's a matchup nightmare. He can run away from people. He can stiff arm, smaller defenders off him. He's 6'4", 230 pounds. He is going to play in the NFL, and that's a rare thing to say for a skill position player in the MAC. And also, the other part that I like about buying in on him now is that he got better as the year went on. When it was only MAC opponents, he was really eating. In his final 5 games, he averaged over 5 receptions per game, 85 yards, and he scored 4 touchdowns in those contests. So he's a guy that I think can make Connor Bazelak look like a plus quarterback in a group of 5 league. So the fact of the matter is, he is my guy. I think Bowling Green is going to get to the title game in the Mid-American this year, and he's going to be a big reason for it.
I love it. Yeah, we both have futures on Bowling. I believe we both have futures, right, on Bowling Green to win the MAC. So we are going to be firmly a Falcons podcast this year. Anybody else you have, or just Fannin?
Just fanning for, the offensive side, but if you want to talk defense, Ahmed Hassain for Boise State, the defensive end, he's a tackle for loss specialist. He had 16 and a half last year, but the backstory is what I just can't get over. He could become, well, he's already the first FBS player from Egypt, but he could become the first NFL player drafted from Egypt. He left Cairo as the nation's #1 CrossFit competitor in the under 18 category. So this guy is a physical specimen, and this will only be his 6th year playing organized football. So he's just gotten better and better as he's learned techniques, as he's learned how to play within the team construct. Physically, he is just such a problem, and it's the reason why, even as a Group of 5 player, he's on the Bednarik Award watch list. He had a 9-game sack streak last year, and he's like, basically, you can rush 3 or 4 guys and get to the quarterback because you have him, which is what Boise's going to need because their pass defense last year was horrific at times. So being able to drop extra men is going to be a big part of it. I just think, his backstory and what it means to a program like Boise and really for any Group of 5 team. Anytime you get a good player, a Power 4 team just plucks you. Like they go in, they just, they give him an NIL bag and they're gone. But to have the kind of loyalty for him to stay with this program, and also all the work that they had to go through to get a player from Egypt in the first place. And I will say this. He could be the first NFL player from Egypt, not to be confused with Amon St. Brown, because I was like, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I was like, oh, he has to be Egyptian. Why would he have an Egyptian god name? It turns out his dad was just really into that. He's got a German background. So that's it for the history lesson and, all the country connections. But at the end of the day, this guy is absolutely phenomenal. I can't wait to see what he does for Boise this year.
Love it. All right, I'll give you 2 as well. Mine are both on offense. I cheat a little bit. First one, you always hear the stories about the kid that was discovered, as a recruit because he had like the star quarterback on his team, and all the scouts would come and watch the quarterback, and was like, hey, that other guy's pretty good as well. I'm doing that as well. Look, we were watching our New Mexico State games for Diego, obviously, and I would be texting you every game, be like, why? I love Jerry Kill, but give this Monty Watkins cat the ball more often. He was like the second or third string back. This dude averaged 9.7 yards per carry last season on 59 carries. Now he's the lead back. Now he's the main guy. I was screaming at my TV. Every time he touched the ball, he'd break a few drum. Like, give him the ball every play. 21 of his carries, 21 of 59 were for at least 10 yards. 45 of his carries went for a first down or a touchdown. This dude is lightning in a bottle. He is a threat to score literally every time he touches the football. He was a 4-star recruit who started his career at TCU playing cornerback and running back. He's recruited to play corner, play a little running, play a little corner in practice. So he was also a state champion track star in high school. Just unreal speed. I love Monty Watkins. I'm not sure about this team coming back this year, so I'm a little down on the Aggies with Tony Sanchez. I know we're both not fans of him, but hopefully Tony Sanchez is smart enough to just give Monty Watkins the ball every play. I love him. So he is my guy. And then kind of a little bit of Diego in him as well. I'm going my second guy, Arkansas State quarterback, Jalen Rayner. If you listen to the Sunbelt pod, I'm not as high on Texas State. And one of the reasons is because I'm high on Arkansas State. I love their offense as well. And they basically have the same question of just need their defense to be better. But for this pick, I don't care about their defense. Because when Jalen Rayner took over from this team, they went 5-4 under him. And when they won, when he looked good, they were crushing teams. He finished the year with 17 passing touchdowns, 5 rushing scores. They bring back his 2 leading receivers. I think Jalen Rayner is in for a monster sophomore season, leading the Arkansas State Red Wolves. He's got a little Diego in him where he just kind of, not the most talented, I will say, guy, but just finds ways to make plays. I love watching Jalen Rayner. He is my guy for this year.
I'm hoping for your sake, because you've been, as you said, you've been carrying the water for Monty from day one. You're like, get this guy the ball more often. A little trivia time, because if he has a breakout season after having such a huge year as an understudy, we'll go back to 1988 when Barry Sanders finally got his opportunity to be the full-time starting running back in Stillwater. Who was he backing up in 1987 that he couldn't get to the top of the depth chart? Do you know?
Oh, God, no.
Thurman Thomas was the running back that he couldn't get over. Those 2 guys in the same backfield. So, if you go 9.7 yards per carry and you give him a full dose, 250 carries, I'm not great at math, but I think he's going to be flirting with some NCAA records for rushing yards in an entire season. So hopefully he goes to that level and keeps New Mexico State relevant, because I agree, the Sanchez experience is not something I'm looking forward to, but maybe a single player can change my mind. happy to keep an open mind here in September.
Stop what you're doing right now and subscribe to the newest college sports YouTube channel.
College football is around the corner, and the new BBOC channel is your destination for betting on college sports.
Interviews with former college athletes and other topics such as college football 25.
Subscribe now and get in on the action.
All right, Breeze. Enough of that nonsense. We're here. Let's talk ball, baby. Week 0 with a moment we've all been waiting for. Kicking off the headliner, sealing the show, high noon over in Ireland, Florida State versus Georgia Tech. Just kidding. Who cares? We don't give a shit. You can sleep in tomorrow or sleep in on Saturday because 4 o'clock, we got Montana State at New Mexico. Now, look, this line's moved a little bit. Montana State, 11.5 now. It was 9.5 on Monday, so the line's growing. Bronco Mendenhall will make his coaching debut for New Mexico after 2 seasons away from football. Got a lot to do, taking over 4-8 New Mexico team. Montana State, kind of a disappointing year last year. Picked to finish first in the Big Sky, went just 8-4, but they entered the year ranked number 4 in the FCS preseason poll. This is a very, very good FCS team, hence the 11.5 point favorite here. So Montana State hasn't actually beaten an FBS team since 2006 when they knocked off Colorado 19-10. I know a lot of casual fans see Montana State. Who the hell is that? New Mexico? That I know who that is. They're an underdog too. What about you? Are you going to take the familiar face, or is 11.5? Are you laying it? What's your thought here on the Montana State New Mexico game?
Well, for week 0, we have 2 ends of the pendulum in the FCS. We have Montana State, who's a legit national champion caliber team.
No.
And then we have Delaware State, who, there's probably some D2, maybe the best D3 teams could beat them. So they're at the opposite ends. So this is simply how I think about it. If you are in the running to be a national champion at the FCS level, you're a solid mid-tier bowl team at the FBS level. Now, particularly in the early season when depth does not come into play nearly as much as it does later in the year. Now, with that being said, we got a new guy at the Action Network, Joshua Nunn. If you're unfamiliar with his work, he is an absolute savant when it comes to FCS football. So he gave me a cheat sheet, and be sure to follow along with him on the Action Network app. He's going to break down so many FCS versus FBS games in the coming weeks. He gave me a cheat sheet on the Bobcats, and I think it's important to just basically make the case on both sides before laying out a play here. The Bobs can really run the ball. They ran for 291 yards per game last year, which was second in the FCS. They also finished second in scoring at a hair below 40 points per game. They returned 4 all-conference performers on the offense, 2 on the line, quarterback Tommy Mellott and running back Julius Davis. Mellott graded out as the 4th best quarterback at the FCS level by Pro Football Focus, and Davis was a former Wisconsin running back. He just got stuck in the logjam of their depth chart, so he goes to the FCS level, and he's been killing it. He averaged almost 7 yards per carry last year. Overall, their offensive line is expected to be one of the best in the FCS, although they're breaking in 3 new starters there. Defense is where this gets interesting, and this is where I start to dig in to potentially, taking the points with New Mexico here. The Bobcats play a 4-2-5 defense, and they lost lineman Sebastian Valdez to Washington. So the Huskies get a great FCS player moving his way up. They also lose their top linebacker and top tackler in Nolan Askelson to graduation. So in a 4-2-5 defense, losing your 2 best players in the box, I think hurts against a New Mexico team that is going to want to run the ball. So the question is, can Bronco Mendenhall work his magic right away in game 1? They're breaking in an entirely new offensive line, but I think that basically, hides the fact that they have the players up front to move Montana State. When you look at what they have a Georgia transfer, Juwan Singletary at center, and a 2-time JUCO All-American in Wallace Unamba at guard, who's a biscuit shy of 340. So I think they're going to be able to move, the defensive front. And if they do, they got an Arizona State transfer at running back. They also have Andrew Henry back. And then they have this quarterback, Devin Dampier, who, in my opinion, has the opportunity to be one of the breakout stars of the G5 this year. I don't think they're going to win that many games. If they get to 3 or 4 wins this year, I think it's a good stepping stone season for Bronco Mendenhall. But I do think Dampier is going to be an electric factory the entire season. When you look at his high school, highlights, and you look at the work he had last year, 6 touchdowns, 0 picks, and he also just absolutely did damage on the ground, nearly 6 yards per carry. Taysom Hill, Bryce Perkins, Bronco Mendenhall gets these dual threats to work for him right away. So I'll finish by saying this. New Mexico has much like a lot of G5 teams. They got a lot of new faces on defense, but their defensive coordinator is someone that I believe in. Nick Howell has a proven track record of success under Mendenhall at BYU and Virginia, including a year where the Wahoos set the school record for sacks with 43 in one season. He's put together some really good pass defenses. So I think if he takes away the pass and could stack the run in this game, 11.5 is just too generous, which, by the way, according to Joshua Nunn, our new guy in the FCS streets, is the largest point spread for an FCS team playing on the road against an FBS team in history. So I think the market has just gotten, a little bit, in front of themselves here. Give me the cherry and silver. Go Lobos. I'll take the points.
Is there a number you'd stop at?
Yeah, I wouldn't take this at 10 flat. I think there's, but anything over that, get the hook, go ahead and take it. I think this could be a coming out party for Dampier and a really fun game. I think sometimes the week 0 hate gets thrown around pretty liberally. This game, I think, has an opportunity to be fun because the Montana State run offense was a ton of fun to watch last year. And as I said, they're running into a defense that's breaking in just about 9 full-time starters.
Yep. All right, we move to another game, 8 o'clock, CBS Sportsnet. Another game that has seen significant line movement just from Monday to Tuesday. SMU down to 24.5 favorites. When I wrote this down Monday, they were 27.5. So a little bit of buyback there. Now, look, it's always a little awkward. We're sitting here, we're starting the season, talking about our ex. SMU moved on to bigger, better things. We're trying to show we moved on. We don't need them. And then yet here we show up with this grenade Nevada, and now we don't look so good. But SMU's making their ACC debut. Jeff Choate also making his head coaching debut for the Wolfpack, hired the former Texas defensive coordinator, and he will be tasked with slowing down Preston Stone and this SMU offense. Nevada brought in a ton of Power 5 transfers, but we need to see how it'll work. Brandon Lewis was just named the starter over AJ Bianco and Chupa Purdy. I agree with you. Not good news. We were hoping it'd be Purdy just for the upside, but he is hurt. So Lewis gets the guy. Started 10 games last year. 13 at Colorado before that. So he is the most experienced guy. So you should have a guy that kind of knows what he's doing. Now, look, Nevada as a whole should have more talent than last year. They should have better coaching than last year. They have a ton of Power 5 transfers, but this is still a massive rebuild. And this is game 1. So for me, you get down to 24.5. The question is, how healthy is Preston Stone? And how long will he play? Rhett Lashley already came out and said Kevin Jennings will also play. So does Stone only play a half? To see how long does he go? And basically you have to ask yourself, will the Mustangs run up the score? Now they do play Houston Christian next week, so there is no look ahead spot. So I don't know if that is I don't really know if that works in their favor as like they're holding stuff back or if they don't need to or what the deal is. What's your take on this game? How long do you think Stone plays? How does that factor in your handicap? Are you laying it with our ex-boo or are you siding with the new lover in Nevada?
All right, let's start with Jeff Choate. I do have to correct you. It is not his head coaching debut because he did have head coaching experience with Montana State. He led them to the FCS semis. So, I mean, it's a perfect combination as far as I'm concerned. I love the hire because he's run his entire program before. He also has tons of FBS experience at Wazoo, Florida, Washington, as you mentioned, most recently as a co-DC at Texas. But this turnaround is going to take some time. And when I look at this, whether it's 24, whether it's 27.5, I don't want to get tied up in that. I want to go team total over 41 in this spot. I'd play it up to 42 because I think SMU is going to want to send a message as a new Power 4 conference member for the first time. I think they want to make a good impression. If you take out their loss to Oklahoma last year with Stone as their starting quarterback, the Ponies averaged 44.6 points per game. 6 of his 7 wideouts return this season, and he always spreads the ball around, which I think is really nice because they were kind of looking last year for someone to replace Rice in terms of that go-to receiver, but none of their receivers had a target share over 13%. So the fact that he has that many receivers back and he has no problem spreading it out, I think is a good sign that they'll hit the ground running here. RJ Maryland is a fantastic tight end as well. They have a deep backfield. The offensive line has 3 starters to replace. I think that's going to matter when they get into ACC play. But Nevada cannot rush the passer. Wolfpack were 124th in sacks last season, and they have a brand new secondary. So Choate, even though he has a lot of experience on the defensive side of the ball, facing a passing game that could be as dangerous as SMU's with a brand new secondary is a really bad recipe here. And finally, you asked, will they run it up? Lashley is a run it up kind of head coach. Year 1, 6 games with 40 points or more. Year 2, 5 games with 40 points or more. This is the first game in the new Power 4 conference for them. I think he's going to put on a show. I think he's going to want to make a statement. And whether it's Stone for, let's call it 6 drives or, 2.5 quarters, Jennings, I think, certainly is somebody who's talented enough to make this offense go. So I don't think it's necessarily going to a vanilla playbook and a backup quarterback that he doesn't want to give meaningful reps to. So I think they're going to score in the 50s in this game. To get it anywhere south of 42.5, I think is an overplay in the team total.
Are you more bullish on take the full game and let Jennings run it up as well? Or would you prefer over 21.5 team total in the first half and just hope Stone cooks early?
Yeah, I think both of those are pretty compelling, but I think the way that you framed it, that I know I'm going to get Stone at least for the first 4 or 5 drives, I think that may be the way to go as opposed to the full game.
All right, now everyone, take a break, chug a vodka Red Bull. We're staying up midnight on the island. What could be better? This is just every degenerate's dream. Midnight Hawaii, first chaser of the season. I mentioned how bullish I am on Hawaii during our preview pod. I love their over. Timmy Chang brought in quarterback guru Dan Morrison to help with the offense. He also brings in former Jets defensive coordinator Dennis Thurman to help with the defense. I love both of those moves. They were able to keep Braden Shager out of the portal. He jumped in for a little bit. They kept him on the island. They bring back both of his top receivers, yet there is some questions. We were recording this Tuesday night. Ashlock will definitely be out there. But Stephen McBride has some eligibility questions. He's been back at practice, but he was not listed on the depth chart that came out Monday. They say his eligibility issues are not related to his suspension from getting arrested in the offseason. I don't know how that's possible, but there's still a lot of questions up there. The way college football works, he could get cleared on Friday and be back out there. I don't know. So there is a question mark on there. I'll kind of have you touch on that when you talk about how that factors in. Now, Hawaii does play UCLA next week. And Chang has hinted that he doesn't plan to show everything in this game, and he's saving stuff from UCLA. I know Colin Wilson was big on that in his Hawaii money line against the Bruins next week. But you mentioned it earlier. Delaware State's terrible. They went 1-10 last season. They haven't beaten. They beat an FBS team just once when they smoked Akron in 1987. So you're having a horrible FCS team. You have a Hawaii team that we're pretty bullish on. So my question to you is, are we laying north of 5 touchdowns with the Rainbow Warriors and staying up till 2:30 in the morning on sweating Spectrum Sports?
Now, first of all, this opened at 27, and that was an awful number by any sportsbook director who put it out there. All of us sharp guys, we hopped on it right away. Are we still laying it at 39? Absolutely. We're laying it with the Rainbow Warriors here. But let's back up for a second. You point out that Spectrum pay-per-view is airing this game. Do you know how much it costs on a single game basis to buy
I don't know what Spectrum is, if I'm being quite frank with you.
So I thought, and this is going back multiple years, when I really wanted to watch a Hawaii game and it was on Spectrum Sports for the first time, I thought to myself, it's got to be $7.99. Maybe it's a deluxe movie, an IMAX situation. It's $18. It is $69.99 to watch this game. If you want a full pass for all the Spectrum pay-per-view games this year, it's going to cost you $299. That's the same cost as season tickets in the Mackay sideline section at TC Ching Athletics Complex. You could physically be there and watch the games 4 rows off the field for the same price as getting to watch it on your home computer or TV. We're not going to get into that. I want to bring the positivity about this Hawaii team. Now,
can you just, I just want to tell you how happy it makes me to just picture all of our listeners sitting on their couch, pretending to watch Netflix with their wives or girlfriends, and just refreshing the Action Network app, just watching that little football move just at 1 a.m, just being like, come on, Bows, baby. I love college football so much.
All right. First thing, in terms of McBride, he's not going to play. In terms of my handicap, I do not expect him to be on the field, whether it's the suspension from, the situation that I believe got knocked down to 2 misdemeanors. But either way, they're taking it seriously. They've made it clear from the get-go. Yes, he's back at practice, but he's not cleared for game action. And the eligibility question, I would just be shocked if he were to go ahead and play in this game. That doesn't matter to me, because let's get into Delaware State. The Hornets, as I mentioned at the top, they are the bottom of the barrel at the FCS. They ain't be stinging.
The Hornets, they ain't be stinging.
They went 1-10 last fall, but their one win was over Virginia Lynchburg. And I will forgive the audience if they are unfamiliar with them because they compete at the National Christian College Athletic Association level. I've been in this game for a minute. I did not know that this was a thing, that there was a Christian College Athletic Association, but that's who they beat last year. When they played FCS and FBS teams, things got super ugly for them. They gave up 44 or more in 5 games. Army, and we all can close our eyes and remember how crappy Army was in the first 2 months of last season. They lost 57-0 to Army. Then Miami of Ohio, who struggled to put offense together and basically had to use the Grozo Award winner and a salty defense to grind out every game in November and December on their way to a MAC title. They dropped 62 points on their head, and North Carolina Central, an FCS top 25 team, beat them 55-14. I don't care if you're going vanilla, if you're saving things for the UCLA game, if McBride's not playing, they're going to boat race these guys. And one added stat from our new man, Joshua Nunn, they were outgained by 194 yards per game last year and gave up sacks on 11% of their dropbacks. So when you look at their quarterback play, Marquis Adams, he had a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio last year, 9 TDs, 9 picks. And remember, this is a Hawaii defense that was top 50 against the pass last year. I think, in the slow rebuild, we're kind of glossing over the fact that Timmy Chang's defense actually got better, and 4 of their 5 starters are back in the secondary. So whether they're playing vanilla, bringing, crazy blitzes out of their Lions Den linebacking core or not, I think it's going to be very difficult to close your eyes and envision more than 10 points for Delaware State. So I think Hawaii gets into the 50s here. They're going to cover this game comfortably. I'll lay the 39.
Yeah, I love it. Well, you and me both already bet this. This was, I think, the first. We talked about this probably months ago. We both laid, 35.5, I think, to what I got. I think you got the same thing. And it moved like right away. So, yeah, I mean, again, it's week 0. You're listening to this podcast. What else? What do you have better to do at 1 a.m. than be refreshing your Action Network app, seeing if Timmy Chang and Shager are leading the boys down the field. So I absolutely love it. Breeze, it is so good to talk football with you. It is so good to give out game picks for you. I'm so excited. We're all bows this weekend. Any final thoughts?
I'm just excited for football to be back. At this point, I think that the off season, it feels like it gets longer every single year. But this particular year, I'm just going to try to talk to our TV overlords who control the entire sport. Just give me one more island game that doesn't include an island team like Hawaii. Like, give me a G5 classic, give me a Boise State versus an App State or Liberty versus James Madison. Like, give me something juicy right out of the gate that we could compete on the same level as the Emerald Classic between Florida State and Georgia Tech. That's all that I want, because you know what? I'm already happy. I'm fired up for these games. I'm going to have action. I'm going to be certainly, monitoring these quarterback battles, everything that's happening, some in game, some reading the tea leaves of these coaches. There's plenty to keep me occupied, but just give me a little bit more. Like, ESPN, Fox, CBS, you guys are the power players. Just get us one G5 game that has a little more juice than what we got right now.
Yeah. By the way, I assume you're going to buy this game. So like, should I just like FaceTime you at midnight and then you can just hold your phone up to the TV the whole game so we can kind of watch it together? Is that what we're going to do?
I believe I put out the flare last year on Twitter where I was like, I'm not paying the $70 for this. And multiple people, including our friend Keg, went ahead and told us that you got to go ahead and go. There's some like free app on Apple Plus that goes ahead and gives you access to the Hawaii football games. So if you guys just go ahead and tweet at us over at either the Action Network, official Twitter, or mine over at East Breeze, I'm happy to point you in the right direction, because I'm going to be up late, whether it's, with my kids, keeping them up way past their bedtime, or, sneaking out of bed at 1:30 in the morning to check out the second half of this game. I'm going to be watching it.
Listen, I don't know that everything Keg is saying is necessarily above board. So let's go ahead. How about this? Just to make it easier. I know we have lots of Hawaii listeners, a lot of Rainbow Warrior fans out there. If you were on the island and you were at this game, one of our, Ohana over there on the island, slide into our DMs, and I'll FaceTime you from the game, and you can just hold your phone up to the game. Give us the live shot. How about that? Let's just do that. Help the G5 boys out here. Breeze, it has been an absolute pleasure. You want to take us out here?
Sure. All right. So as I mentioned at the top, if you enjoyed this podcast and you were listening and you wanted to get it a little bit earlier, make sure that you're subscribed to the BBOC YouTube channel For next week, you're going to be able to catch our episode about 36 hours early, which is fantastic for anyone who's looking to get the best of the numbers that we're putting out there. And also a programming note, Colin and Stuck giving you the full breakdown of week 0 coming up really in terms of what you're listening to right now, probably in 24 more hours. And then the BBOC live show returns on Saturday. That's Colin Stuck, Brett McMurphy, and myself. We're going to go through some of our favorite futures, how we're playing week 0, and talking big picture about our predictions for the 12-team college football playoff. So be sure to tune in there live. You can catch us over on our YouTube channel, on our social feed, on Twitter at Action Network. For Mike Iannello, I'm Mike Calabrese. This has been the Group of 5 Deep Dive under the Big Bets on Campus banner presented by BetMGM. College football is finally here. Thanks so much for riding with us during the offseason. It's time to get into the black, start stacking some winners. Can't wait to do it with you.